Second part. The room that had been prepared for Dee was as sumptuous as that of any palace. The ceiling, walls, and floor, none of them made use of rough stone and mortar. All were fashioned of marble and glittered with gold and jewels. There's no antidote for the poison the Duke uses. You can only rely on your own constitution. Still, it's incredible. You won't even lie down. Dee had taken a seat on the sofa, and he didn't even put the cool, wet towel Jean offered him against his forehead. Your body will seem like it's burning, yet it's still freezing cold. Severe pain should be racking your muscles and bones without a moment's respite. No matter how tough the person, most die instantly, and no one's lasted 2 days. The lovely young lady must have seen quite a few deaths. Don't worry about me. Once I'm better, I'll slay Gilson. Go back and tell him that. If I don't get better, then that's the end of it. I was ordered to see to your needs. I can't do that. That clan's gotta have a mess of spies besides you. Jean turned her blue eyes toward the source of the hoarse voice, which was like that of an entirely different person. It seemed to be coming from the hunter's left hand. Look, those paintings and sculptures are all alive. Go on, tell me I'm wrong. The hoarse challenge was followed by a different voice, this one like iron. Vigesh's Portrait of the Glutton. Sandberg's sculpture Eurydice trapped in the underworld. They're priceless, aren't they? Jean stared at Dee in astonishment. You're quite knowledgeable, aren't you? Both artists worked exclusively for the Duke, creating artwork for this castle. Very few people even know their names. Jean closed her eyes. There was a pause, and then without cadence she began to list those people out of the past. The Duke, his mother, myself, the Chamberlain, and... The secret ancestor, right? Said the hoarse voice. Jean nodded, then got a stunned look on her face. How do you know that name? Who in the world? Haven't you heard? You might be pretty, but you're a rank amateur. Perplexity stained Jean's face as she stared at Dee's left hand. And making a fist, Dee said, Don't worry about it. Not quite knowing what she wasn't supposed to worry about, Jean nodded. I'm going to get a little sleep, Dee said. Jean got a dangerous gleam in her eye. I'll stay here with you, she said. That dagger up your sleeve. Go ahead and use it if you like, said the hoarse voice. Every ounce of blood in Jean's body froze. No matter how he might appear on the surface, the hunter should have been feverishly hot on the surface, and freezing cold inside. And even mired in those twin hells, the young man had seen into her heart of hearts. But how did you? Jean's query was tinged with fright. She knew at a glance that the gorgeous young man before her was no ordinary assassin. However, she hadn't known there was this much to him. You've had a bloodlust wafting from you from the very start, Dee said in a low voice. When there's some hesitation you can hide it, but a true will to kill always leaks out. Dee, already had his eyes closed. Down a stone passageway colored by a dim blue light walked the young woman in her armor. The purple cape flaring up behind her manifested the intensity of her resolve. Yet for all that, her footsteps didn't make a sound. She stopped in front of one in an endless row of cells, and her eyes snapped wide open. The cell was empty, and there was no sign of the boy who should have been imprisoned in the one to its left. Who did this? The young woman groaned. Investigating the door set in the bars. It was still locked. These doors locked and unlocked in the usual fashion. They went to the trouble of relocking the door. The young woman looked up. There would be a surveillance camera somewhere. "Playback," she ordered. A 10-foot-wide screen of light came into being in the middle of the corridor. It showed an overhead view of the prison. Display only these two cells. Just the part where the intruder is present. As she said that, the light faded. Nothing was recorded. The young woman was rooted in place. There was no malfunction in the computer that controlled the camera. If there had been, the master computer would have instantly put a new camera into operation. The intruder had ordered the master computer to erase all data about their activities. Did you hear that? The only one who could do something like that. The young woman's lovely visage was twisted by terrible hatred. Hate changes people. Jean was the perfect proof of that. Page break, indicated by a small cross. Jean halted before the same great door that a young man of unearthly beauty had entered, then exited a few hours earlier. "My good Duke, it is I, Jean." After the span of about 2 breaths, an enormous, solemn voice rang out beyond the door. "What do you want?" "I believe I ordered you to serve as D's personal attendant. A boy and a man have escaped from the special G3 level cells." "What of it?" "You come to pester me with this. For those humans, this whole castle is hell itself. The fools. They'll learn they would have been far happier staying in their cells and waiting for their blood to be sucked from them. Such is not worthy of notifying me. They were liberated by someone from the castle." "Oh, yes." Although he must have been surprised, his tone was lethargic. Perhaps that was what became of those who'd been cut off from all worldly connections for so long. "By whom?" "A personage who could free prisoners from the finest quality cells, without unlocking the doors, and command the security camera and master computer to delete their image." Gilson's voice fell silent. The fact that Jean referred to a personage meant she probably had a good idea who it was. "I see. Return to your duties. What do you intend to do?" At that instant, her chest plate was rent diagonally, and her body enveloped by pale electromagnetic waves that threw her 15 feet before slamming her into the floor. She slid another 15 feet across the floor before coming to a halt. Just as she was about to get up, a mass of fresh blood dropped on her from above. "That blood won't come off. Not until you're dead, that is. And that's your punishment for letting a minor incident drive you to such idiocy. Jeanne raised her gore-spattered face. Due to the way she'd fallen, only the left half of her face was stained with vermilion. "As you command," she said with a bow when she got into her feet again. "Next time, I'll cut off your breast on that same side," the distressed-sounding voice informed her. "What's more, I'll pull out all your teeth, so you'll look like a 500-year-old hag, though that would still be far younger than you really are. Do not bother me with your insipid blathering again." As soon as Jeanne had left, a voice just in front of the door said, "This is Budges." It was the formless being. "Keep an eye on Jeanne," the grave voice ordered him. "Yes, my lord." Perhaps the orders of the being beyond the door were ironclad, because Budges didn't ask why he should be spying on an ally. Brought back to life after 10 millennia, and before I even have time to enjoy it, the same concerns from 10,000 years ago begin to gnaw at me again. She has orders to see to Dee's needs, but if she does anything disquieting, dispose of her. Yes, my lord, women are truly bothersome. True enough. Pardon my abruptness, but may I speak? This was how questions were usually broached. Very well. Before Jeanne or anything else, there's a man who should be disposed of first. I know. He is more powerful than any foe we fought 10 millennia ago. Are you two trying to say that I, Gilzen, might taste defeat? No, it's just that man. There's something fundamentally different about him. Different from humans and from us. I don't know what it is. But if ignored, he is sure to become a fearsome opponent. Dispose of him as soon as possible. Lightning raced through the air, and an ear-splitting cry of agony rang out. Gilzen needs no instructions from you. All of you need merely do as I say, and refrain from doing what I tell you not to. Yes, my lord, Budges replied, the pain still raw in his voice. Second part, end.